Today, we're looking at a blue ink by KWZ, their Iron Gall Blue #1. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that if you want to skip around, you can, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Lamy All-Star with a broad nib, wrote with it for a day, and then used it to take my notes for this video. In order to standardize, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in this first writing sample. There will be more writing samples on different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer quite a bit of shading throughout, and this has managed to be on the page for quite a while, and it still has it. The extra fine is about the same tones as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, still a lot of very nice shading throughout, 10 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen. Now there's no shading. When I said it's the same tone, it's all the same darker tone. 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows no color variation, although we do get it up in the extra fine. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. Medium is the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 29 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we don't get any. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, some shading going on, not bad. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, a lot of very nice shading happening. A lot of it. It's pretty nice. 12 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine shows a lot of color variation, and we are getting it up here. The medium shows none, and we got none. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see the blue that's barely noticeable in the writing, but it is there. We see it on the bottom, and then it's pushing up into some very dark grays. It is fairly dark as a line across the top. It's really interesting. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And that blue is starting to really bond with the page, and we see that that gray is not all pushing up as much as it has in the past. And then there's this kind of very pale off-white color that's moved up. That's not the water on the filter paper, that's something from the ink. The next one on the right is where I let it dry for 24 hours. And what we really see is that blue is much darker, much more there. That gray is not moving as far, and that weird kind of off-white color, very noticeable there. What happens if you let it dry for 72 hours? Well, that blue, very much there in the filter paper, a lot less of that gray moving, and that weird off-white color, much more noticeable at the top, but we see that it didn't take very long for this ink to really bond with the paper. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, there's no reason to worry about using this ink in a note-taking situation. It handles it perfectly. Now, water is lifting some of the darkest parts, but leaving a lot of this ink behind. Water is all that I actually needed to get this out of my pen, though, despite how it looks on the paper. This is an iron gall that bonds with the paper.
Pen flush didn't do much more than water did. Bleach, surprisingly, completely removed it from the page but left this kind of yellowing behind, which makes me believe that the yellowing behind that is left from a bunch of different inks is kind of an oxidation that's getting into the paper.
I test for viscosity or flow using a thing called a tilt test. I will link how I do that, the video of it, down below or up in the cards. I also then put it onto a standard distribution so it's more easily seen with all of the inks that I've tested. Now, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9.
KWZ's Iron Gall Blue number 1 has a viscosity of 2.26, making it normal.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
KWZ's Iron Gall Blue number 1 has an average dry time of 17 seconds, making it not just normal, but average. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Iron Gall Blue number 1, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a nice magenta, and I chose Noodler's Nightshade.
The second writing sample is done on black and red Franklin Christoph and Limon paper.
Here we're looking at black and red notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. Now the extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading throughout, kind of that peppering of shading that we've seen in different inks. 6 seconds to dry. The medium is much darker than everything on the page, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine does show some color variation, and we do get it in the writing. The medium shows none, and we got none. Franklin Christoph paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is slightly darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, peppering of shading, as in we get some darker letters throughout some of the writing. 7 seconds to dry. Now medium is the darkest by far on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, and we do get it. The medium shows none, and we got none. Last up is Limon paper. No bleeding, no ghosting, handling it very well. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have spots, very minor spots of getting slightly darker. I don't really want to call it shade, but look at what's going on in the W, and you'll see what I'm saying. Extra fine is slightly darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, peppering of shading throughout, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is significantly darker than everything on the page, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, although in the extra fine we do get spots of shading that are there, and that is all that I have for the writing sample.
So what do I think of KWZ's Iron Gall Blue number 1? I think it puts down some nice shading on the paper as you're writing, but as the ink ages, some of that shading goes away. As for the tone of this blue, it's quite a bit darker than I would prefer my blues to be. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? While I don't care for how some of the shading ages into the paper, I prefer how it looks from a wet fine, where it goes down a bit darker. Too dark a blue for me, but at least much darker so that as it ages, it becomes almost like a black. If you've enjoyed this video, remember, I like thumbs up, you like thumbs up, everybody likes thumbs up. Unless you didn't like it, then give me the thumbs down. Both are good. Thanks for watching.